So the 70th anniversary of the Center Theater is very exciting, and it's kind of humbling to remember that that it showed its first films at Christmas 1947. So it was one of those original early movie houses that had its heyday, and from the time it opened in 1947 through especially the 1950s. By the 1970s, when the Center Theater kind of fell into sort of a different phase in its life, people were moving out to the suburbs. I mean, downtowns across the country were losing the life that they had even 10, 15 years before that.
The theater was decayed. It had been vacant for I don't know how many years, and the interior was gone. We were able to obtain the original construction documents from an archive in Kansas City. Robert Bowler was the original architect, and he did hundreds of movie theaters across the country.
One thing that we've attempted to do with this, with the preservation of the historic Center Theater, is preserve some of the more unique aspects of its architecture, beginning with the box office. One thing that does too is it tells you that when you're visiting the museum that you're both, you'll see the Chihuly chandelier on one side and you'll see the box office on the other. So you'll really see kind of the two aspects of what this museum is about in terms of its programming. Then we've preserved some of the banister and some of the interior work as well that really gives a feeling of historical architecture of a movie palace. This is something different, that it's not your typical movie-going experience.
And I think it was a catalyst, I guess, in a way, of development in this area. I think helped stimulate activity on the west side of downtown. Before that, most everything was happening on the east side in Bricktown and in that area.
This community really kind of realized that it had two things that it could do. That it could, that it could bring this museum downtown, finally sort of in a place that would be a focal point for the community, and that it could also support film in this community through a through the restored movie theater. So it really is sort of bringing both of these under the same umbrella, and to me it makes a lot of sense.
Every city needs to have those institutions, and though the art museum did exist at the fairgrounds, it wasn't in the center of the action, I guess, and it was in a civic location, which being across the street from City Hall is definitely a civic, prominent location.
One thing that I would say is that the construction of the museum was able to fold the legacy of the theater into it. So you had this wonderful art house theater in downtown Oklahoma City. And the visionary leadership of this museum was able to see that, identify that, and by building a museum effectively around it, the history of the museum and the history of the theater kind of became one. The history of the theater was folded into the history of the museum. So we have this kind of greater, broader history of visual culture now in Oklahoma City that's really preserved by the Oklahoma City Museum of Art.